Hello and welcome back to the Mighty Podcast, the show where we talk bolt action, Conflict 47, and all things miniature mayhem without putting you to sleep, or at least trying. I'm Craig, and joined as always by my co-hosers Derek and Shawn from the Dice Hoses up here in the Great White North. Today we're going to take a look through a new Weird War expansion. Like everybody else, we've got our hands on the brand new Festung Europa supplement for Conflict 47, which is the first of the Rift War books, and it brings emphasis to the necromantic horror straight to the table. If you thought Conflict 47 was already crazy with mechs and rift tech, wait until you meet those updated Totem Core hordes in American Airborne. So I'm going to hand you over now to Shawn, who's going to give us a bit of an overview of the Festung Europa book.
Yep. So what we're going to do is we're going to go through the fluff of the book. We won't dwell. I mean, we're not going to drill down into the competitive aspects of the new models that come up with this book. We're just going to talk about the story and maybe a little bit about how to use the models that are introduced in this. And in the book itself, starts right at the beginning, almost rewrites things that are going on, or just gives a fresh take on the story that we know so far. So just a bit of a timeline. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to post an article on the website. So we're going to do this book in two parts. Today we're going to go up to Operation Pluto. And before we record the second one, I'll post an article on the website with just a timeline, just for reference. I think it's handy. I found myself making one, and I know there's probably one on the Warlord site, but I think it'd be fun to build one as we go along as well and fill it in. So what we see as we open up this book and start to go through it, it starts right with the Trinity test in Feb 6 of 44. And then it does mention how the director Donovan, at the beginning of this book, Director Donovan is in charge of strategic services and research. And then he has a conversation and they change targets from Berlin to Dresden for Big Boy on March 1st. And then they get underway, like they're going to drop the bombs. And then on the 11th, the B-29 carrying Old Man for Tokyo is shot down and lost over Iwo Jima. So we don't know what happens to that in this book. And then on March 12th is when they drop on Dresden now. And that's when the Green Vault reveals itself to the world. It basically takes over from the Nazi Party and uses the bombing to show their incompetence and convince everybody to join them. And they had people in place to make sure that that was going to happen when the resistance from pockets of SS showed up to try and stop it. So now the Green Vault has showed its hand. And then a little after that, April 7th, Roosevelt enters the Area 51, which is what they now call the Trinity test site for their first bombing. And then 7 days later, he comes back. He gives his, we are now chosen to lead the crusade, he calls it, against the evil Axis powers. And he says, oh, and also the communists. So then May 1st, Russia says, what? So now they call the U.S. an enemy of their state. So now that is broken. Commonwealth allies with the U.S., so that brings in Canada as well, and they form a bit of an alliance because the U.S. is very protective about their new technology. And then Operation Overload happens. In this book, it says June 6th. I think in a previous book they might have said June 7th. In this one, they say June 6th. Operation Overlord happens. And then that progresses, and we get into the breakout and what have you. And there's also a little more to the timeline where there's something called the Necromobilization Summit on August 14th. I think we'll open the next podcast with that in detail, but it happens here, August 14th. Then Paris is liberated, and things continue from there. Paragons are 45, and the Rhine happens in 46, and then 47 is really where everything kicks off with a bang. So we'll just go through that first bit, and then we'll get into the new stuff. We'll go through that first sort of Normandy part that happens up until what's called the Long Winter. So the Grüne Gewölbe, the Green Vault, which sat in the shadows for centuries, has revealed itself. And in this book, they talk about how, and this would have been in other stories, at least hinted at before, how they were in secret for the longest time, and then they kind of are the ones responsible for, they say, the choosing of Dresden, and they hint that it's the director of scientific research in the U.S. who was their agent, who was responsible for that. But they go even further, and they say the Green Vault knew that this was going to be necessary. So even further back, they've been researching and hiding in shadows. And then they saw that, they needed this rift tech to happen, and they were willing to let the Americans get it because they saw that was the easiest way for their plans to come to fruition. Now they're calling themselves the Green Vault. German technology is green, not the American technology. Their rift color is different. Their rift effects are different. So we don't know if it has to do with how you are granted your rift powers or if it's geographic on where the bomb drops. We don't know any of that. Not enough clues for that. But all we know is that the Green Vault has been waiting for the rift to open. They needed it to open in Dresden for their plans and maybe for other reasons. And when it happens, it's colored green. So uh, now the U.S. never it stops to even consider that when they did their tests that the opening of the rift in the U.S. was a fluke. Um, they just figured they could go ahead and drop more bombs, and they didn't consider that more rifts would open. So it is what it is. They are duped into it, you could say, by the Germans, by the Green Vault, not necessarily the Germans, because that seems to be a worldwide organization now. To doing their tests, to building the bombs, and to dropping them, which allowed on Dresden specifically, which has brought the Green Vault to its power. So D-Day happens, and they advance inland. The Germans put up a resistance, and then they get as far as when we get to Cobra, and Cobra is the breakout in our world, and it's the breakout here. So Operation Cobra happens, but then once they start to break out of the bocage, they run into zombies. Now, the book models of zombies are all soldiers, but the first zombies aren't going to really be soldiers, so you can go crazy with your modeling if you want, because the zombies that they run into all came from Dresden. So what happened was the bomb lands in Dresden. Um, the army actually seals off the area. They let it cook, and then out of that, all the bodies who weren't completely eradicated or burned or destroyed start to rise up as these undead. We'll call them monsters. The first of the rift monsters from the German army. So these things are transported. There's some logistics to it because they're not easy to control or to maintain if they're not in ideal temperature or maybe there's some other things involved too. But they move them, they get them here. So now there's a zombie army waiting for Operation Cobra when Operation Cobra breaks out, and this throws the whole thing, the whole operation amok. This is about where the necromobilization summit is going to happen in August. So now everybody knows about what's going on. So in this case, the Totenkorf are zombie, are the people from Dresden. So I would suggest you model people from Dresden as some of your zombies because you could. But all the ones you're going to buy out of the box are going to be soldiers of some sort, or a couple of them are named Matt. All right. Yeah, and Bob. All right, so that stalls the advance only until the zombies run out, and then they are able to advance again once the zombies start to dwindle, because they only had that supply from Dresden, so they could only stall them long enough as it takes to kill all those zombies and deal with the zombies that run around the countryside. And then they make their advance, and come Christmas, they're still about where they're supposed to be. They got France cleared out. They're near the Belgium, and they're coming up to the coast of the shore, the borders of Germany. And then we have Operation Newport that happens after the bulge. So the bulge is, oh, first the bulge, because the bulge is where we see the next monster, and it's a Schreckwolfen that the Germany has managed to put together, and that's where it's also where they introduce their walkers, their little spider walkers. So this makes the bulge a lot more successful than it was originally. They're able to push all the way to Antwerp, and they make some good advances. But then Operation Newport happens, and this is the U.S. response finally to all these new things that the Germans have been producing, and the U.S. shows up with their Tesla weapons and their power armor and their walkers, and now we have a proper rift fight starting to happen. Still not at 1947, but now we've got this technology in play. And at the same time, while this all was happening here, off on the West Front, we'll be meeting a character named later by the name of Professor Zogling. He's been creating new zombies through tech that he's found and using the Eastern Front as sort of a place to gather up the required material for making zombies. And then, so now there's more zombies showing up. So now it's a big proper slog fest, and this really bogs things down. The same time down in Italy, um, the fighting that's happening there is not really progressing as far anymore. And they're going to end up eventually throughout the whole war. It seems to be set up as a sideshow. They're going to eventually come to a standstill. And most of the resources are going to be drawn back up to this main thing up in Europe. And what we don't know, and maybe will come out in another book, is what's Audie Murphy doing in all this? Because I'm sure he'd make a bang up hero. He was already one at the time. So let's see if he shows up in a future book as well. All right, then we get some good stories in here before we go on to finish. So the book kind of pauses here. We get some good stories. We get Dead Man's Hunt. This is where we're introduced to Roberta Wells, the first of the other of the heroes in this book. Well, three. There's three heroes mentioned and four heroes mentioned in this book. But the highlights are really Roberta Wells and Zoglig, because those are the first two models that they put out. The other two are coming, I think, shortly behind it. So Roberta Wells is what I like to call the Los Alamos Avenger, the first of them. She's a super scientist who is able to use her science to allow her to compete in the field. She shows up on the battlefield. The first story we see her in is called Dead Man's Hunt. And there's a soldier fighting with zombies on the line, and here we see the zombies are. We got a good close up description of them in this story. So we see that they're kind of silent when they move. They only make little raspy noises out of their mouth, and they have really bad breath. The bad breath is mentioned at least 3 times in that story. It does make eye contact with the soldier. At least the soldier thinks so, and I don't know how zombie eyes are good, how good they are at working, but I guess the rift keeps the eyes working. It's very strong. And then it's overwhelmed when Roberta, the mad scientist or the super scientist, shows up on the field and drops a little sensory bomb to overwhelm it. And she does it with this green flash, which suggests she's been studying the green volt enough, because it wasn't her rift technology so much as it was leaning into theirs. Or maybe it was just the color, or she's been able to reproduce the green volt, the green rift tech. But she overwhelms it with that tech and takes it over. And we're going to hear more from Roberta Wells, and it's important that we have heroes in the story, and that they get good bits, because this system in the game, when you go to play it, is going to be all about the heroes and what you can do with it. So you want the little models of each of your heroes. If you're on YouTube this week and you saw Carney, he put out a video where he had a model of Brock that was given to him by Michael Myers, and he was going on about Brock and how he's a hero, and that's a good story for him, to inspire him. So we can look at these stories to inspire us. When you think about Brock, I like to, if you look up pictures of Brock for like the Battle of Queenston, where they're going to mostly be from, you'll see there's a couple of them. One where he's standing there raising a saber, and there's another where The cop, it's they don't know who the artist was, but you see him, he's holding his sword and he's going like this. It's like he's telling them to continue fighting. But there's a guy in the picture leaning over him, and if you read his account, it's not really what he was saying. What he was saying was he was pointing to the top of the escarpment there in Queenston. He said, I think I could see my house from up there. So unfortunately, he didn't make it through the fight, but they built a big tower up there so people could go up and be in that spot where they thought Brock was, where he was pointing to. So if you do go to Queenston, you'll see the statue of Brock. You can climb it and you can get that scene. Where was I? Oh, Wells, right.
Wells.
So Wells is the first the heroes were introduced to, and then it talks about the U.S. Paragon program. These guys are interesting because it's sort of a initial tech thing, and they go into a little bit about how it's an imperfect science. 10 sign up, one succeeds, the other nine don't know what
Not so
happened to
much.
them. That's right. Then it goes into Operation Grenade and Redwood. So we're almost at the end of the story of the initial story now, because Operation Grenade is the U.S. crossing the Rhine, and then Redwood is the UK crossing the Rhine. So it's Patton and Montgomery again. Now these two, they do dwell a lot on the conflict between Patton and Montgomery, just sort of like in real life, but it's more played on here because it's at the higher levels. There's the conflict between Britain or the Commonwealth, specifically, Britain and the U.S. about because the U.S. has this tech it wants to protect, and they're leaning on the British scientists a little bit, and it was they brushed in some British scientists to help them get back and catch up on what was happening, to catch up to the zombie tech that they experienced at Operation Cobra. And then when they did that, a bunch of Russian scientists were able to sneak in because they were kind of already in the background. But so now Russia knows about all this, but they can't get their own tech. But um, so now but it just keeps a constant friction going between the U.S. and England because of there's espionage happening. They don't trust each other. They don't quite know completely what the other person is doing. So they have a competition going. So Patton crosses the Rhine to the south. Montgomery crosses the Rhine to the north. To the south, Patton is a little more successful. He gets a beachhead. He gets a footing. He's able to stay there. To the north, Redwood doesn't go quite as well. They get across, but eventually they're turned back, and they are unable to hold it in the north. And then the Axis come back, and now in the book it says that the Axis were able to cross that river easily because of how large their mechs are. So here's a here's a German mech, a light mech, and here's an American light mech. I not sure if these are the mechs they're talking about. Either there's more mechs coming, or the heavy mechs again. They're maybe the German heavy mech looks. What I think it means is that the German mechs have legs and are all terrain, and they treat the river as rough terrain. So they were able to easily cross that river. They should have treated it as impassable, and then it wouldn't have been so easy for the Axis to get across that river. Regardless, the Axis crossed the river. They even pushed the British back a little bit, but only the mechs got across in their story, so they weren't able to keep it without support. They weren't able to hold anything. So it ended up as a stalemate there. And that's going to set us up for what comes after the long winter. That brings us to the long winter, where everybody hunkers down for the winter. It's the end of 46, and then we come into 47. This is really where all the stories and all the books and all the action is going to kick off, and it'll open with Operation Valentine. So before we get into that, and Craig talks about Operation Valentine, have either of you guys got parts of that first book, the first section that you really liked?
I like the little like the side panels that they kind of bring you up to speed with what's happening somewhere else, because like the whole story is basically the narration of what's happening in Europe. So like the Paragon program, still my favorite thing, because I
Yeah,
wonder if if this is going to be one of those things where are those nine that didn't make it, Are they dead? They don't talk about it. Or are they just kind of hidden away as some kind of, a version of the Noctabin or the Noctjager or the Shrekken? Like they're vastly, hideously mutated. And,
Yeah.
the Americans being all, kind of, they got the super shoulders. They want everybody to be like, pardon the reference, Captain America. Like, we want these guys to all be good and we want them to be strong. And these 9 guys are there. But, like, if the war starts to turn, like we know by the end of this book, like something's going to happen, are these guys going to be their mutated freak army, or are they just going to keep these things? Maybe they are dead and they never come out, but it's kind of that, we're the good guys, we don't use mutant horrors. Oh damn, we've been invaded, we need money, we need numbers, because we've been killing 9 out of 10 soldiers who want to be here. Maybe we should bring these guys out of Area 51 and throw them at the enemy. So I like that, because those little side stories, they kind of lead you to question how or what could be happening in the background.
Yep. Yeah, we'll see what happens with those 9. It's fuel for future story writers.
Yeah.
They might be able to latch onto that and use them, or maybe they have plans right now on something they want to use with the Paragon fallouts, those who wash out of the Paragon program.
Yeah. So I find that's the interesting thing, is those kind of questions on the side that you're given all the time. Greg?
Yeah, so I got 2 parts that I really like. I think the first one is I've read a lot, watched a lot about Overlord and the Battle of Normandy and such. And so to see them go into that, and then how they introduce the Totem Core into what would be normally historical perspective. So it's troops on the ground. Like, it's to say there's a rift and stuff is cool, but it's kind of not, it's like relatable. I mean, it's like as if you could say anything's relatable, but with the Western Front, with Western Europe after D-Day and stuff, there is, you can imagine all the history that all the stories how you could then interact that with the Totem Core and how that evolved and spread across Europe. So I like that element. And then I think the other part is I really like the Totem Core and how they've developed the Totem Core. I like the fact that initially, like Shawn was saying, that they were in Dresden and they were voluntold to get them off the streets. I mean, I just imagine that there's these like groups of soldiers with big prods somehow grabbing, because they're not really willing, these Totem Core. They're not like, hey, oh, I'll shamble along and do whatever. They're just as dangerous to the Axis as they are to anyone else. So there's some kind of sentience to them, also, however that appears. But then they take them, put them in transportation. They have some kind of Red Bull Express style logistical system with refrigeration units every so often to keep them docile, and then they kind of just release them and point them in a direction. So that's interesting, that it's not some kind of zombie horde that's mindless and doesn't, they just, and they have total control. I like the fact that it's not as if they do have total control. And actually in the book they explain how they then develop the walkers to be able to, they figured out how to create Totem Core. So I find, and what's intriguing about that is, and this is the thing when you read too much into things, I suppose, but with the Totem Core, they're going across the battlefields in these walkers, and they're identifying bodies that can be used to be risen. which to me suggests that there are corpses that do not meet the parameters that they require to be raised, which is interesting because it's like, well, why would you not raise it? What is the reasoning you got? And if you look at the miniatures, now this is where you could talk about miniatures versus the background, the fluff and stuff. You used to have rules in Games Workshop where it'd be like kills lots of things, and then in the rule it would be +1 to hit. Right, so it's kind of a little bit like that, but you have it. So to me, it's as if they're looking for certain types of casualties to raise, which then opens up a whole series of questions. But it then appears that they tend to have a little bit more, an element of control, not total control, but an element of control, because there are, we'll look at it a bit later, but there are rules for roving totem core. So even Dresden, it sounds, is unsafe for the army to go out in small units. You're gonna get probably eaten up if you're not careful. So I find this kind of double-edged sword of totem core to be quite a cool theme that I've not seen before. So I like that, and I also makes me wonder if there's the opportunity in the future for there to be the ability to take control of them, right? I also like the final thing is also like the fact that there's little roving bands of totem core or isolated individuals, and the allies have had to, and even the Axis have actually created little police squads. Yeah, whose job is to eradicate these things. So
they call it cleanup crews.
Yeah,
cleanup crews. So I like that concept of it's a messy weapon that you just point, but it's not 100% necessarily effective or 100% controllable or anything. So I kind of like that component of it.
It's a lot of the quotes. There's a couple quotes like Zoglig's quote where he goes on about how the undead is the perfect hero. You don't have to worry about his loyalty changing, and where it doesn't, you don't have to really motivate it. It's pure aggression. It doesn't have supply lines.
The last thing I find interesting is the rift itself. Like Dresden was bombed by an atomic bomb.
Yes.
And yet the Germans are going in and out of it with no radiation. Like, is this 1940? There's no real radiation issue. Like, they don't understand radiation. But Zogling and crew and everybody seem to be living in Dresden. So that makes you wonder, is the rift powered by this radiation? Is that what opens it up and it swallows that radiation to keep it going? Or are we just supposed to, suspension of disbelief, forget that part of the bomb? But an atomic bomb was dropped there, and these things. I know they say there was initial destruction, but like half-life of radiation is not 2 months like this. So where did all that radiation go? What happened to the radiation that Dresden is now their center of power?
Mm-hmm.
So I find that interesting too, because it makes you wonder, does that mean atomic bombs are now off the table for fear of opening more rifts and giving more power to your opponent?
Well, I think that's definitely true because it's been repeated. But I think the writers can easily. I think everything points to the fact that these rifts eat the radiation that's created. Because you're right. In the beginning, it says there were radiation burns when they dropped it and people were charred and stuff. But there's no radiation now, obviously. And Roosevelt walked into his rift. So
I think that's. I don't know if I'll ever answer that question, but I find it interesting.
Well, I also wonder, is the rift the same? Is it the same type of rift? Is it the same size rift? Because historically they were kind of like two different bombs, right? So the first one was it Little Boy? No, not Little Boy. There was a name for the test bomb originally, wasn't there? So, So it was small. It was really just to see if they could,
Do
do it. Make all the. I always get confused between fusion and fission, but
it. Yeah.
and the uranium activates and it all explodes and blah blah blah. So is it the same size as the German one, which would have been a bigger bomb?
What's
And
called big
then
boy?
yeah, and what happened to the one that over Japan, right? Over or Iwo Jima, sorry, not Japan,
Yeah.
but what happened to that one? So yeah, and that is now as well historically, if I because the two bombs that were dropped historically were different, right? Because one was an atomic bomb and one was a hydrogen bomb, if I
Yeah.
recall.
Mm.
Fat Poor Man,
So
Little Man, or something like that. Yeah.
yeah, so is the other one not an atomic bomb, and could it open a rift
Yeah.
if it's a different thing? And is it this? So there's a whole load of things you could
And
go
and
down rabbit holes with, and
yeah, because
just
that brings you to the rabbit hole of what I said in our earlier podcast when we were first talking about K-47 and how everybody's getting the information on how to build things from this rift. So does a different bomb open a rift to a different place, and we're now the proxy war for those different places?
yeah.
You know, like
Well, different colors,
yeah,
right?
like
Like I said,
because
the blue, the
the
green.
you got the green, you got the red, and but I mean the green and the blue for the Axis and the Americans. Everybody else is sharing, so they just kind of have a color, but
Mm.
or is this just somebody on the other side of these rifts just going playing us like puppets? Look at these little guys killing each other. Just send them more stuff to see if they'll kill each other some more. So
Yeah, if they're
Yeah,
smart, they'll play that out without explaining it.
yeah,
Just leave the mystery in there, kind of thing.
and just
well,
leave little
there is
token
that bit.
hints.
There is that bit though that's in the was it the necro the operation was it that takes place the summit. There's some big clues in that summit
Yeah,
Yeah. We'll
that
go through
hints
that.
at things.
Let's go through that in detail before then, at the beginning of the next podcast, in lieu of going
definitely,
through
Yeah,
Norman.
yeah,
And we'll get some conspiracy theories going from that. First, let's
definitely.
talk about Valentine and
yeah,
Pluto to kind of give us some backdrop to that.
You bet.
yeah. So Operation Valentine. So this is the Allies. This is still the Americans and the Commonwealth push. They've discovered that really the big issue for them is they need to get to Dresden as fast as possible because the Soviets appear to be heading towards Dresden, and they want to make sure that nobody else is able to get to that rift first. And so the Joint Chiefs, which there still is a thing, basically decide that they're going to go ahead that way. But the problem is they're unable to send aircraft to go and recce these places or send airborne or any such units, which is, if you recall, historically was one of the strengths of the Allies in the fact that if you have air superiority, well, actually air domination, you could pretty much do whatever you want, move wherever you want. You've got the freedom to move your logistics without fear of attack. And that's kind of been neutered. So the Allies have to try and find out, and they manage to get intelligence that basically tells them that there's these uh, gravitic anomalies in the cities that are caused by these big, massive walkers, these Sturmriesen, and they are creating all this gravity issues so that planes and such can't get there or anything. So they're thinking, well, how are we going to go and get to go to Dresden, and how we're going to reach it? We've got this awesome force that's ready to go, made up of airborne, which are super airborne, and they want to go in and with the Fireflies, and they want to go in and take Dresden, but they're going to have to take out these Sturmriesen first, and so there's a combined operation to go and head in and take these out, and the there's kind of 4 objectives as to why they're doing it, which is to make sure that the flight paths are re-established so that there's going to be air support so they can send in Operation Touchdown, which is the name for the Fireflies, to go after Dresden, to draw Axis forces away from Dresden. They're also hoping that the Soviet forces that are attacking on the Eastern Front are going to also contribute towards that. To disrupt the arms production of facilities within Germany's major powerhouses. And then the last one is to establish a new front line as close as possible to Dresden, so that Operation Touchdown is going to be more successful. However, because they find out through intelligence that the Soviets have actually commenced earlier their operation earlier than anticipated, the Allies determined that they've got to go earlier as well, which turns out to be the 14th of February, Valentine's Day. If I was a half glass empty kind of guy, I'd be saying Valentine's Day reminds me of the Valentine's Day massacre in Chicago. So I don't know if I would choose that as an operation. Whereas some people would say, obviously, oh, no, it's to do with love and all that stuff. So, but I don't know. I'm not sold on that. So they send the forces in, and their goal is to breach. They breach the lines. They start to make their way through to these minor cities. So you got Karlsruhe, Heilbronn, Tübingen, or whatever that's called. But then their goal is there's 4 Festungs that are predominantly in the Western Europe that the Allies are trying to get to and besiege so that they could destroy these Sturmreisen so they can get Operation Touchdown, the Fireflies, a lot nearer to Dresden. And that's Festung Nuremberg, Munich, Ravensburg, and Stuttgart. So it's like an absolute bloodfest. But this is where we come to Festung. Things seem to be going well generally for the Allies. They're getting closer to these targets and where they're going, and they do reach Munich. So they get quite far, but they're not able to breach any of the Festungs. And one of those reasons is because there is a 17th Stahlkampfgruppen Otto de Gross, which is all Stahltruppen. That is, well, it's also Schwer Feldartillery Battery and Panzermech. There is also
Lots of heavy equipment.
a lot of heavy equipment, and there's also, I don't know why this guy's not a general, because he's pretty important and he's in charge of Festung Stuttgart, but that's Hauptmann Heinrich Gross. I mean, he should be probably General Heinrich Gross, I would imagine. But so he takes over and he manages to hold off indefinitely the Allies trying to take Stuttgart and stuff. But they do manage to break in to Stuttgart, and they do manage to destroy that city Sturmreisen, which allows the Allies to get closer to Dresden and then allow for the follow-up of Operation Touchdown. But I'm not going to talk about Operation Touchdown. I'm going to talk about Valentine.
Okay. You can't do Operation Touchdown quite yet, but this one gets them a lot closer.
Yeah.
Also, while this is going on, we have July 4th happening on the U.S. mainland, which is probably going to be tied to the next book coming out, where the U.S. is going to withdraw troops. Later, we learn it's 1/3 of their troops from the Europe theater, from over here, to bring them back home. And that might be some of what slows them down. Now, and when they do the mission, we did the Felda Giant mission. There's Sturmriese, the giant anti-air device that has to be taken out. That hopefully Evan's going to print for us.
So
when they do that,
so as of the day we're recording this, the Sturmreisen STLs have just been released by Warlord Games, free to print
Yeah.
for everybody. Our local printer, Evan, who is not here today, did the quick math and figured out that it's going to take just south, I think it's 298 and a half hours, so just south of 300 hours to print this, and require,
It was over a kilometer.
yeah, it was 1.2 kilometers of resin. I think it was like
Over 4
5 or
spools.
6 spools or something like that. Yeah, he was like quite unimpressed when we said, "You're still going to print it though, right?" So
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love the fact that they've released this model. I think there's going to be at least one in every area to play, just because I think everybody needs to have that as, even if you just use it as broken, as it's one of the destroyed ones, and just have it as a battlefield terrain. I think it'd be awesome.
I think what we need to do is get everyone we know that has a resin printer and get them to print one leg.
Yes.
That's
Print one leg, and then someone print the body.
Yeah.
And we're done. So you can't have one person do it. You've got to have about 8 people.
Yeah, you've got to have a print farm. Definitely a print farm.
I have to get my printer working.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that brings us to the scenario, Fell the Giant, Craig.
Yep.
Yeah.
In the book, they were successful.
Yes.
They didn't capture the city, but they were successful in the mission.
Yes.
Yeah. So Fell the Giant, the first of the scenarios in this book. So again, these scenarios really aren't tournament driven. They're story based, narrative driven.
Yes.
Fun game. This is definitely an interesting game scenario. We'll talk about ideas about how you can run this, but this scenario is predominant. Well, the thing I like, it's predominantly the US forces. You have 2,000 points of Fireflies. So in the book, it looks like it's the old platoon structure that you would use. But the thing I like is that you can, if you want, drop 500 points and go with 500 points of British. Well, it says British. Yeah, it's British Commonwealth, but 500 points of automated infantry. So that's quite a cool little combo opportunity. And if you've got an American force and you don't want to get a full British force, but you wouldn't mind getting your hands on those automated ones, especially the plastic ones that are coming in June, then this is the opportunity to do that. It's a full jump infantry with the linebackers, which is that's quite a cool army thematically and to play and tournament wise as well. The Axis are Stahltruppen officers and squads with Heinrich Gross, and then you can take any of a platoon command. I imagine people will probably take, Totem Core and things like that just to bulk it out. Although, to be honest, and we'll talk about it in a minute, you're probably just going to take a force that's just going to sit and watch your opponent as they try to take out the Sturmreis. But we'll get to that. So the scenario is on a 6x4 table. It's like city ruins. The defender gets in their deployment zone, gets hidden deployments. So this makes it even more difficult for the allied players.
And their deployment
the attacker
is
basically
36
is wave
inches.
1. Yeah, it's 36 inches. So the attacker is wave 1. So unfortunately, we'll talk about in a minute, their jump ability is extremely limited. And their objective is destroy the Sturmreis. So basically, you can ignore everything else. It's irrelevant. You've got to destroy that big 6-legged walker. You do get a prep bombardment to reflect, but if you roll a 1, that's going to suck big time for you. And even if you get a 6 on the Sturmreisen, there is it doesn't really do that much. So again, we'll come to that in a moment. But you get the first turn. The attackers get the first turn, first wave. The good thing is it's anywhere from the DZE. So typically your DZE would be 12 inches up the side as well. So that might be an opportunity for you to be able to get on slightly a bit closer. It's 6 turns, potentially 7, which is really important in this scenario when you're the allied player trying to figure out how to destroy the Sturm reason. And then the last thing is you can use other forces. It doesn't have to be the 108th Airborne. It doesn't have to be the Otto de Gross. You could use anything. But historically, in an alternate universe, that's what happened. That was the forces involved. So that's kind of your overview. Now, this is the big important point here for the Axis is the Sturmriese. So this thing is an absolute beast. It doesn't walk, thankfully. Right? If this thing could move, it's game over. So it's not a vehicle. It's not a vehicle like every. This is an atypical unit entry, so it's probably more comparable to a building than it is to anything else. And theoretically, if you don't have a Sturmreese model, because you don't have 1.2 kilometers of resin, you could use a building instead to act as a kind of gravitic anomaly generator kind of a
They
thing.
do
So
give it a keyword other than vehicle. They gave some sort of keyword to the entry.
Gigantic Rift Engine.
yes,
Engine. That's it. Gigantic Rift Engine.
yeah. So this thing is armed with the rift accumulator, and 6 light automatic cannons, and its damage value is 12. Armored all round, so that's basically 12 all round. There's no sides or rear on this thing. It's got crushing blow, gigantic rift engine, special rule, light automatic cannons, rift accumulator. It's a Sturmreese keyword, and it's vulnerable underside. So what does that mean? Well, we know armored all round means that it's tough as nails all the way around. There's no side or rear impact for weapons, so if you're trying to get behind it, it makes no difference. Crushing blow. So this thing is so big, it does not make normal close quarter attacks. It's never considered to be locked in combat. So, okay, that it can't leave combat either. Not that it's locked in combat, but it can't leave combat.
That's a good thing. That means you can always shoot it.
Yes.
Yes, yeah. Now, if you execute an order and you move or remain within 3 inches of the Sturmreese's feet, on a 5+, you take D6 hits at +6 pen and suffer D3 pen markers. Okay, stay over 3 inches away from this thing.
And this comes into play later on as to why that just destroys things. But carry on with your keywords.
And it's not even that you can. I'm trying to think because it's. I'm just in my head. I'm thinking because it's not locked in close combat, but it still is close combat. So you could theoretically go into combat, assault, and then consolidate out.
Yes.
But I think you would also auto lose unless you destroy it. It's got gigantic rift engine, so it doesn't need an order die. As I said, it never moves, never receives pin markers, passes all morale checks, so your flamethrower is useless. It entirely blocks all line of sight, just like dense terrain. It ignores vehicle damage results except for knocked out. And so you ignore the first 2 knocked out results. However, each time you knock it out, it gets a knocked out result, you reduce its armor by 1. So down to 12, down to 11, finally to 10. And then on the 3rd and final time, it's destroyed. And it becomes a wreck. So that thing basically is a building that's still a building and blocks line of sight. I would imagine it's impassable unless you've got jump packs. It's got light automatic cannons. So each leg, which it's got 6, each leg has got a barrel of a light automatic cannon facing outwards. They act independently, so you can shoot at different targets. They've got a 90-degree arc of fire. and is considered to be equivalent of being on ambush. So at the minute you get in, it's going to take shots, and it can fire once per game in response to an enemy unit moving
Once per
within its
game
line
turn.
of sight.
Once
Per game turn, sorry.
yeah.
Per game turn. So basically, it's like ambush every game turn,
Yeah.
right? The Rift Accumulator, it claims it. So any unit, friend or foe, that gets an exhausted Rift die while the Stern Reaser is in play gets to re-roll the result. And then the Stern Reaser itself, this stops units with jump packs or flight, cannot deploy anywhere on the table. So even though you've got an army of Fireflies, they have to walk. They can't jump on. Whilst they're and then forward air observers can't call in aircraft attacks either. And then the last special rule is close quarter attacks and ranged attacks at point blank range strike the bottom of the Sturmreise, which is 1 damage value less than normal. So in other words, it's basically like attacking the top.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So this is
It's
where
plus,
this is where that crushing blow comes into context.
Crushing blow is 3 inches. Close
Within
combat.
3 inches, vulnerable underside is close quarters attacks and range attacks at point blank range. Point blank 6 inches. Those legs are well far away, more than 6. You basically got to take that hit to get point blank.
No, you just got to be within 6 of the leg.
well, to get the point blank, you've got to be between 4 to 6 inches, right, or 3.1 to 6 inches to avoid that. To get the point blank, I would argue, you could, because basically it's only if.
Depends on how far those 6 legs are. Like if they're spread out, and from leg to leg is a good.
I'm measuring my 6 inches to the legs, not to the center.
No, yeah, okay, but what I mean is, if you got a leg here and a leg here, if that distance here is 9 inches, then you've got a 3-inch window where you're not getting smashed. But if this distance is 6 inches and you're trying to get to the underside, you know what I mean? You got that 3-inch bubble around each paw. Oh, this is gonna. I can't wait to see this thing printed to see how this works, because like you said, if you've got, this is basically 500 points. If you've got another 1,500 points of stall trooping, I got 6 turns to take it from 12 to 11 to 10. You could just park your, and I've got to get across the board to do it. I got to get 3 feet, so 36 inches of movement. I have to run them because I can't move at 6 inches, and I don't have flight, so I can't jump. You know what I mean? Like you're going to spend your first turn or two just getting there, taking shots. It's going to be
come
awesome.
on the edge of the D. You can come on the edge of the DZE. So that's 12 inches, right?
Yeah, but in the map, when you look at it, it doesn't. It says the.
Oh, it does. It says the back of the board. Yeah, you're right. You're right.
So
it's
there's no coming on reserve from the side. There's no infiltration. There's no jumping on with flight. This is going to be a fun mission, and it's, if you win as the American or as the non-Sturmreisen, it's going to be an awesome moment for you. But
it's going to take you 4 rounds to get there, right?
Yeah, and
4 of the 7 rounds,
and you still got 1,500 points of German or Axis to go through. If the Axis decide that they don't want to sit on the back of the hill and just watch you flail.
It reminds me of the first Battle of Bull Run in the American Civil War, when everyone went from Washington, D.C., and they sat and they had a picnic and they would sit and watch the first battle. That's what I envision the Stahltrooper eating, kind of tack and hardened biscuits and stuff, and just sitting back and watching.
Some bratwurst up on the hill with their schnapps.
Yeah, exactly. Now, there is one last key rule, which is the Rift enhancement for this thing, which is, forgive me my German pronunciation, der Halfsiehender Sturm, the Gathering Storm. So the Sturm Reset is deployed with 5 Rift dice, which are set to exhausted. And it may not be assigned any additional Rift dice for any reason. So no cheeky master.
Rift Mastery.
That was it. I was thinking Rift Mastery. Yeah. So you can't do any of those. And then, so no way to change it. Every time something is a Rift dice is set to active, or one of its active Rift. Well, sorry, let me restart again. Whenever a Rift unit in play exhausts a Rift dice for any reason, you change one of the Sturm Reese's exhausted Rift dice to active, or one of its active Rift to surging. And if another Rift unit in play overloads its weapons, one of the Sturm Reese's exhausted Rift dice may be changed to surging instead. Any exhausted Rift dice remain with the Sturm Reese at the end of each game turn and are not rolled in the turn end phase. So basically, you don't even, as the allied player, want to be using your Rift weapons because you're going to power up the thing you're trying to destroy.
So for everybody, when I was saying it's going to take you 3 turns to get across, and we're screaming, "Hey, the Americans, they're fireflies. They've got regroup in hell." Yeah, as soon as you exhaust that dice, you've now powered up this. And what happens when you power this up, Craig? Please let us know.
Well, as soon as the Sturm Reese has 5 surging Rift dice, it immediately discharges its energy, which interrupts another unit's order. So that's really key important. You change all 5 Rift dice to exhausted, and then the player controlling the Sturm Reset may place a 4-inch template anywhere on the board. Any unit under it suffers 2d6 hits that ignore cover with a 4+ pen and suffers 3 pin markers. I mean, pin markers in this game doesn't mean too much. It depends on what it is, but
Well, it will against the
so it
Americans
can
because they
trigger.
got nothing. They're fearless.
That's true, Americans. I was thinking for a moment automated infantry or whatever, but yeah. So, and if 50% of your unit is vaporized, you have to take a morale test. It always strikes the top armor of vehicles, and if the building is hit, it collapses on 10 or more. So it's a pretty powerful, basically it's a heavy howitzer hit that you're placing on there. And it can be, you could ramp this up pretty quickly if people are silly enough to start using Rift energy orders left, right, and center. Yeah. That's probably the only reason you might do that with your Axis forces. I'll just go use a Rift tech. It doesn't matter what I do. I don't care.
Rift tech picnic.
Yeah, I'm going to start shooting my own guys, my Stahltroopers, so I can put pins on them so I can then shrug. And then after the attack, now this is cool. After the attack has been resolved, roll a d6. On a 5 or a 6, the Sturm Reese's controller places the template again within 12 inches of the original template. And it can't be on the same unit that was already affected. But on game 3 and 4, on a roll of a 3 or 4, the energy dissipates and nothing further happens. On a roll of a 1 or 2, instead, the opposing player gets to place the template using the same restrictions, and you keep rolling a d6 after each template is rolled until a 3 or a 4 is rolled. Or a player places a template so no units are hit. So basically, you run out of 12-inch guys to hit. So this thing could go crazy and do lots of damage. So
this could end in turn 1.
Yeah. What have you got that could actually hurt me? Okay, I'll take that. I'm gonna go do that.
Well, in turn 1, everything's gonna be within 12 inches. You just go unit to unit to unit. If you keep rolling 5s and 6s,
yeah,
you know.
Yeah.
It's so not till turn 3 when I'm close enough across the board that I can, the American player can put a template possibly close enough to hit you. Otherwise, he's just going to immediately be putting it in no man's land because he's too far away. Turns 1 and 2.
The thing I like about this though is again it's a rule where it reflects the story in that the Rift tech is not fully harnessed.
Yes.
by the Allies or the Axis, or in this case, the Axis. It's a two-edged blade, right? It cuts both ways, and I think that's the thing I like about Conflict 47 with the Rift Tech, is that there's a penalty typically to pay, and I like the idea that this thing is a beast,
Yeah.
but it also could end up. I mean, theoretically, it could damage itself.
Yeah.
Right? So,
Yeah. If I'm close enough,
so
I as the American player, I just put the template on you. What I find interesting about this is you as a player know that expending your rift dice powers this thing. In the
yes,
lore, those guys attacking had no idea that they were the ones powering this thing to fight them back.
yeah, yeah,
You
yeah,
know, I
yeah.
know it's not real life, but you can imagine that guy on the field going, "What the hell? Where's this thing getting this?"
Yeah, this would be one of those where I'd be like, "Where's the Pershings and where are the Long Toms?" That's what I want to bring to this battle,
Yeah,
right? Get as close as I can and blast it out of it. Sight.
existence.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, so what do you guys think of that scenario? The first scenario, Fell the Giant. I like the fact that it's kind of an early Conflict 47 battle. Gets the narrative going. What are your thoughts?
Sean, you got any thoughts on this?
I assume they play tested it because you're really fishing for sixes at the beginning because you've
Yeah,
only got 86 things you can take.
yeah,
So you if you want to penetrate it, you got to get within 6 inches. So like you said, the first 3 turns you're running, if you're lucky, you can get an assault and maybe bounce a little closer.
Yeah,
But otherwise, you're running there and you're trying to get within 6 inches and then trying to roll some sixes. And if you roll one, you got a 50% chance of getting your first, armor reduction.
yeah, yeah. It kind of reminds me a little bit of World War One, just running across no man's land and
yeah.
hoping you make it to the other side.
I
That seems to be with the story. Just run at the thing as fast as you can and try and take it down.
Yeah,
I the I love this scenario. I think theory crafting it seems like it's very hard to win as the United States, but getting on the table, I can see the limitations of the Sturmreisen. The only negative I have right now is you can see where this book was printed and the writers did their thing and the playtesters probably with this scenario, but the forces, it's meant to be a Firefly platoon, and they tell you to bring the Firefly stuff, but then all of a sudden there's no mention of it, but there is now a Firefly platoon on the list builder, like that they've put out, that makes this, but there's no reference to it. So I'm wondering, chicken or the egg, like this came first and that gave rise to this, or they were thinking about this and weren't 100% sure, but then they wrote this and they're like, oh well, I guess it kind of makes sense to put this out. So I'm kind of disappointed that in this and in the other one that we're going to be talking about, the two new special platoons aren't mentioned, even though you can see that that is the intent. So I'm wondering if maybe the playtesting of the platoons wasn't done yet, so they just said, okay, just write this like this. That's the only drawback that I have to this scenario, is that little bit of like, damn, I wish this was, because that would have been, aside of the scenarios, there's really no gameplay in this book. There's no new models. There's no anything else like that. That would have been an interesting little like, hey, we introduced something there for the players that want game stuff other than the storyline. That's the only drawback I have to this, and it is it's so minor that I don't even think it would, like, if I had to rate this book out of 5 stars, that wouldn't even be enough of a thing on my radar to bring it down. It's more just a
yeah,
damn, I wish they had their ducks a little bit more in the line to get that.
yeah, yeah. I think it's a great scenario. I think, funnily enough, it's actually a scenario that would be perfectly designed for, if I was taking a force, I would opt to take a bolt action force So I give you no rip dice.
Yeah.
I've got super heavy guns in there.
You need your
I'd be
hero.
like, I am
Yeah.
using analog. You're not getting anything out of me. No. So,
You want your heroes to get double activations to get across quicker.
yeah. So that's
Shoot twice would be so useful on them.
yeah. So it's a great. I think that's a really fun. Like I said, you don't have to use the Sturmriese. You could come up with stick a building in the middle instead, and
That's what the
say it's got a
Soviets did.
generator and stuff, and it's pretty much in essence it's the same as a building. Just put a multi-story building in there, and you can use the same scenario basically. So, but no, I like it. I think that's a fun one, and that's the thing I like about these scenarios is that they don't have to be balanced. Doesn't always have to be balanced.
No,
If you could you'll have as much fun going in there and getting your ass kicked and losing as you would go. The fact that when that final guy manages to get in and shoot and bring it down with his last pistol shot or whatever it is.
Sit at the edge of the table and shoot this thing, this mission wouldn't be any fun.
No,
exactly. So
and as a player going into this that this is an uphill battle on one side, so you shouldn't be you should be expecting shits and giggles. Like this is all about shits and giggles. And can you believe this happened? Oh my God, the gathering storm went off 6 times in a row. It was 5, and then it was 1, and then it was 5, and then it was 5, and then it was 2, and then 2. Like it's You're looking for those memorable moments where when you see your opponent, and you're like, I remember that time.
Yeah, you brought down my Sturmriesen.
Yeah,
with luck. But yeah. Well, is it the chances of blowing this up is? I was just trying to think. It reminds me of Star Wars. Was it like
2,720 to 1 or something like that?
Yeah, something like that. It's like never tell me the odds. Yeah, it's exactly that scenario. So that's the operation or the commencement of Operation Valentine.
All right,
Derrick,
Derrick, what's Pluto got in store for us?
The Russians are coming, or the Soviets are coming. It's 12th of April. We're into 1947, and the Soviets are on the move. They've decided that they're closer to Dresden than anybody else. They don't have a rift. Roosevelt has just basically told them that they're godless and they're not friendly anymore. Even though they've got spies over there stealing the tech, they want their own rift. So they're beelining it to Dresden. Now, rather than doing the normal Soviet rush, they stop every once in a while to put up these great big towers. And this is where you get your Soviet national rule, where they're putting out like these sonic waves that cover from these buildings that cover vast areas, and it
I think it's
messes
5
people
kilometers.
up. Yeah,
I think it's a 5-kilometer bubble.
yeah. So it's the harmonic resonators, and I'm going to read it. They're prefabricated structures. They're installed in a matter of days, project directed resonance over great distances. The maximum effective range of a tower has been recorded to be approximately 75 kilometers. This is a less concentrated version of their weapons, and it's what gives you the cripples morale and removes people's ability to think straight. So that's where you get your chance of getting pins every turn from the national rule. So they're marching along, and they're doing really good at driving back the Axis powers, and they're pushing all the way there, and then they run, and they're the Germans have found their the answer to the Schreckwuffen, the Ursus, and the Soviets are finding that they're fighting their own comrades because the Totenkorp are being remade and pushed back at them. So there's a lot of learning back and forth here. The timeline for this is great. They've broken it down. Here's what's happening. Here's what's going on. It's, yeah, you're introduced to Dragov, the Soviet colonel, I think he is. Is he a colonel?
The commissar.
Commissar.
Yeah.
And he is one of the ones that has been begging the commissariat to give him the Ursus drug. Like, he really, really wants to do it. And they keep saying, no, you're too good. We don't want to ruin you. Because these guys, basically, they're turning into these mindless attacking bears. And so they finally let him have some, and he's only like a partial change to him. And but he turns into a beast, and he has to control whether he wants to be tactically minded or absolutely savage. And at one point, he goes absolutely savage to save some troops from some Totenkorp in and around May. So we're into May. He's also got this look on him that people are don't mess with him at all, on their side or the opposing side. So they get halted, and then you get to the next scenario in the book, harvesting the dead.
Yeah, they're halted by a fresh wave of zombies.
Zombies, yes.
Yeah, and they're also, and this is also where we're introduced to the vampire guides, the Nachtsayers.
The vampire guy. Oh yes.
Yeah.
They
They run into those as well.
The walkers, the Nachsayer walkers, are also come out at this point in time. We run into more and more zombies, in which point everybody's starting to...
Why do we run into more and more zombies?
Because Zoglig has figured out how to make it without using, I don't want to say the Rift radiation or whatever it was in Dresden. He's figured out how to, basically he's made a serum that you can inject into corpses, at which point in time they've designed a new walker called the Nachsayer, and it has arms that they literally, the guy inside, the commander inside, crawls around the battlefield looking for corpses, and they can inject the corpses with this serum and bring them back to life. So that's interesting. And it's also, I think the new plastic kit for this is absolutely amazing because they look as creepy as all get up. Big, bulbous, like scary spider-like thing. We also come into the Totengruppen platoon commander, which is he's a specialist character for the Totenkorp to help run them if you don't want to run the Zogling. But this is the new Totenkorp platoon structure. So you can run your undead German or your undead Axis force now. With these three things is basically your core of your army, and if the Totenkorp are close to a walker or a platoon commander, a Toten group and platoon commander or Zogling, they actually lose limited intelligence and can take objectives.
6 inches, yeah.
So a type of control, as Craig was talking about earlier.
Yeah, so we're moving into a style of control, although they don't tell you what it is yet. Still, like, it's still unknown as to how they're controlling these guys. They're still basically freezing them and pushing them up. except for the ones on the battlefield. They don't need to because they're already at the battlefield. And this is where the Soviets are learning that these things are being transported, because in one of the stories they were talking about the guy fighting an old Soviet, like somebody in a Soviet uniform, and then there was like somebody else in a Firefly uniform there as well. So they're shipping these guys left, right, and center. So it's kind of interesting that way.
If you look at there's that picture. I don't know if you've seen it. It's in there's one in the front of the book, but I'm trying to remember where the other one is. It's basically a full, yeah, it's like page 5 or 6, and it's the 2 page. It's this one,
Yes.
and it shows you the Nats there behind pushing. They're even got
Actually,
Trooping.
I put that on my glass.
Yeah. But in there, they've got Fireflies, they've got Axis troops. There's a Trooping.
Oh yeah,
Even
Zogling is making enemies with grouse with that, because he wants the armor back, and he says it's wasted.
But there's also a Shrek Wolf in there as well. There's a dead Shrek Wolf.
Ursus is there as well. And that's one of the little side things, is they're now hunting for more Ursus and Shrekwolfen bodies. The Shrekwolfen they're hunting for on the down low, because they don't want people knowing that they're experimenting on their own. But the Ursus they want, because they want to see if they can turn those, because they're strong and you know, take a lot of damage. So there's a lot of interesting things that come out in Operation Pluto from behind the scenes, and all those little captions where they tell you. So because they're trying to keep you up to date with everything else that's going on in the timeline. Is there anything that you guys?
I like the way they when they first launched their attack too. They don't go right to Dresden. They go for Slovakia and say, "Oh, we're just doing this thing down to Slovakia." And that's why they gave it that silly name of Valentine, is because it was supposed to be later, but they had to launch early because they said, hey, Russia's not going for Slovakia. And sure enough, Russia goes, hits Slovakia and then makes their hook towards Dresden, and that pushed the Allies to update their schedule as well.
Yeah, because they go to Brno, then Prague, and then.
Yeah.
But they also got held up outside and pushed back.
Well, that particular attack against Dresden is going to make it easy for Torch to make some headway later. We'll find out. But,
yep.
Yep.
Yeah. No, I think it's
our touchdown, not Torch. I keep calling it Torch.
I know, right? Yeah, it's cool to see it from the Eastern Front perspective. I like the fact that it wasn't just Western Front. They decided to do Eastern Front.
Yeah, they're covering all of Europe, right?
Yeah. And it's cool because makes me ask a lot of questions about, because they don't mention in the Western Front they do mention Patton. I think they say Eisenhower as well, if I recall, but it's definitely Patton and Monty. But I don't think they say any of the Soviet generals. I don't think that they say Zhukov, right?
No, I never. I don't recall seeing any of their names.
Yeah, so I'm just I don't know if it's an oversight or they just haven't got anywhere with that yet. But yeah, it's I like the idea of them fighting on the Eastern Front, and the thing is that the Soviets' own strength is being used against it, which is manpower.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, they were out-hoarded.
Yeah.
Out-hoarded. That's right. Yeah. So I like that concept. So, but it's interesting to see how these how they're using those harmonic resonators to kind of build these towards the
go forward.
axis.
Like having a base, their own festungs as they go forward.
Okay.
Yeah, and this is where I think this is building up to the fact that on the Western and Eastern Front, it's a stalemate. It ends up being a stalemate, and it's just kind of like, okay, now what? So it's good. Yeah.
So what about this mission then? This Harvesting the Dead mission.
Harvesting the Dead. This is the first of the Soviet mission. I think it's actually the only Soviet mission in here,
The
but
only
this,
Soviet mission.
you can, like, as you go through, you can use whichever forces you want. But this one is the Soviets. Their your Soviet list is going to be 2,000 points. The Axis also is 2,000 points. Um, your first assault platoon for the Soviets has to have two basic infantry squads. So you're basically
Gotta pick your zombies.
you gotta bring your bolt action guys. Then you can contain only one of two specialist or advanced squads, advanced infantry squads. Maximum of two non-transport vehicles of any kind can be taken, and you can have, if you take a hero, it can only be, well, it's the only hero that they have at the moment, Commissar Gregor Drugov. And he can be either the company commander or platoon commander. The Axis, and this is where my little being upset slightly in the last scenario is the same here. You have to take an assault platoon that consists of two token corps and at least two Noxay or walkers in your 2,000 points. So I think this is where they were saying you should use that token corps platoon structure. Now, I don't know if they wanted that to be used here because that allows your token corp to take objectives, but there isn't really no objective in this scenario other than
Oh, this is
harvest
breakthrough.
as much. So you're not worried about it.
No,
So
great.
you got a 6x4 table like normal. You got a 24-inch deployment zone for the attacker, a 24-inch deployment zone for the defender. You're playing short edges to, and then the length of the table. And then
So, yeah, you got to run the table. That's
yeah,
so the Russians got to run off the other side of the table.
exactly. So the objective here is the attacker, being the Axis, has to harvest as many units as possible and convert them into token corps, or destroy them, and the defender has to escape off the
Yeah.
other side.
So everyone that gets destroyed, but everyone that gets created into zombies is worth 5 points for the Axis. So they get
Yes.
5 points for every unit they convert.
Yeah.
And the defenders, the Russians, only get 3 points for running off the table. So there's a slight edge on if you can convert, 2, then they got to run 3 off the table to
They still
to
4.
and have one left behind. Yeah.
So I think this is another one of those interesting scenarios. They do have alternate forces so that, like, you can be playing this on the other side in Western Europe, and you could use an American or British force. If you play British, it would you definitely have to force them to take some basic infantry because the
Well, I
automatons,
think basic infantry is the key to balance the
to balance
scenario.
the scenario. Um, yeah, like this is the breakthrough. This is, they give you also in the map, they give you, they want ruins here, like ruins in specific places to break up the table, but they still tell you, throw some other stuff on there, just at least
Yeah,
have
because what they
this.
show you is only 4 buildings. That's not a
Yeah,
lot. That's on.
that's not a lot,
That's
but
nice.
they're just giving you, and then they say put some scatter terrain to go with it.
Yeah, well, the terrain is in the Germans' favor.
Yes, because they want open.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's one of those where you can put terrain across the table, but in essence, there needs to be probably 3 clear ways through, unimpeded 3 ways through the board, so that you're not jumping 15 hedges to get across to where you need to get to.
Yeah. The other thing is, which is I find interesting, and this goes back to what I was talking about, where Zogling is trying to get Stahltruppen and Schreckwolfen, as well as Ursus bodies to check out, is there's a Rift unit harvest variant. Any units, infantry that have a damage value of 7+, if they're killed on the table, they become an objective marker, and then the attackers, being the Axis, can control them, and then they get 3 victory points for that. And then the defender earns an additional 2 victory points if their units with 7+ or more withdraws from the table. That does not include Commonwealth units with computational systems, because they can't be converted anyway, so they're not of interest. So you got that neat little, hey, you're going to bring a bunch of Ursus? Let's play the variant where I can get even more points. And it also gives you more points, because instead of getting, it gives you less, because you get 2 when they get off the board, whereas your other ones are 3.
Yeah.
So still slanted, like any scenario, it's still slanted one way, mainly towards the Axis, but oh, it's a picture of Bob.
Yeah, but it's being eaten by a dog, have you noticed?
Yeah.
Page 62.
Yeah.
Bob is being attacked by a dog.
Yep.
Poor
Bob.
Poor Bob. Yeah, the other thing about this scenario I like is the fact that if you lose a unit from your original totem core and it's destroyed, you actually can bring on another unit next turn, outflanking.
Yeah, to replace it.
So it's like, this is to give the idea it's a never-ending horde of
this
totem
is where
core.
this is where the Soviets are getting out-hoarded.
Yeah.
So if the Soviets wanted to just sit here and destroy all my totem core, well, okay, the shooting gallery is open, but now they're coming in here and there.
Could this, with the Rift unit harvest variant, does this mean that if you've got a howitzer and I destroy it to take over, my totem core can fire the howitzer? Am I reading that right?
I think
they don't. No, I think the idea behind it is once they're destroyed, you mark it with, and it becomes an objective, because it's supposed to be.
Yeah, but it says the attacker's units may take control of the objective by ending its move within 3 inches. It remains under the. Oh, all right, yeah, okay. Well, that's a shame. I think you should be able to do that.
Yeah.
Suddenly,
the totem core, with their limited intelligence being removed, now know how to use artillery.
They just remember their training.
Yeah.
That's right. They're not picking up rifles or throwing grenades either.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's good. It's good.
That's an interesting.
That's where you can do zombies. Well, Ardennes you could do as well, but I like the idea of doing totem core in the snow.
Definitely.
That's a good thing. Yeah. And like mine did in the desert. Okay.
All right.
So next week, Shawn's going to talk to us about Operation Touchdown. We'll do the rest of the scenarios in the book.
Yeah, next week we're going to get into the summit in detail because it's rather interesting, so we'll give it a good talk. Then we'll go through the Touchdown storyline, which contains 3 missions. And then, is it 3? It's 2 or 3. That might be 3.
I think it's 3.
And then there's a denouement after the Touchdown story, so we'll cover that as well.
And we might have to do a little side special or something to discuss the Firefly and the Totem Core platoon, the new platoons.
Definitely.
Just the structure and the benefits of and how to use them. Because
that sounds too competitive.
No. There's. I definitely want to look at it from a narrative perspective, from a gameplay perspective.
Yeah.
Because taking objectives with Totem Core that can now do that's pretty cool.
Yep. All right. Excellent. All right, then we will see everybody next week. You guys can say goodbye.
Goodbye.
Well, goodbye.
Have a good one.
Auf Wiedersehen.